Okay, real talk for a second. You know that feeling when someone asks you to do something completely simple, like reply to an email, make a quick phone call, or just, I don't know, fold the laundry? And for some reason, you literally just can't? It's like your brain knows, hey, this takes 5 minutes, but your body flat out refuses to move. So what happens? You sit there for 2 hours, right? Just agonizing and feeling totally guilty about avoiding a 5 minute chore instead of just doing it.
Well, let me tell you right now, that's not laziness. And no, you're not broken. The crazy thing is, nobody really explains why this actually happens. That's exactly what we're going to break down in today's explainer. Believe it or not, it's a very specific psychological trait. High IQ minds will often selectively organize and completely ignore what doesn't seem to matter just to preserve cognitive bandwidth for deep problems. They're saving energy for the big stuff. And honestly, once you understand what's actually misfiring in your brain when you freeze up like this, it is an absolute game changer. By the end of this, you're going to look at those so-called simple tasks very, very differently. So let's dive into it.
First things first, we've got to dismantle a massive myth, the simplicity lie. When we call something a simple task, we're almost always judging it on just one single metric, time. We think, oh, it only takes 5 minutes, therefore it's extremely simple. But here's the catch. Time is just one cost your brain is calculating. And frankly, it's probably the least important one. Here is what your brain is actually weighing every single time you approach a task. It's rapid firing questions like, what does this cost me emotionally? What's the mental effort here? Does this feel safe? Do I know exactly how to do it? What happens if I totally mess it up? How do I even start? A task can literally take 2 minutes and still completely fail every single one of those questions. Take replying to an email from your boss. 2 minutes, right? But emotionally, that email could carry judgment, harsh expectations, hidden conflict, or the terrifying fear of saying the wrong thing. So your brain doesn't see a 2 minute task at all. It sees a giant social minefield. Okay, so here's where the evolutionary neuroscience comes in, and I promise to keep this accessible. Your brain has a part called the amygdala. Think of it as your internal alarm system. Its whole job is to scan your environment for threats and trigger either action or safety protocols. Now, the amygdala evolved to protect you from immediate physical danger, like a chasing lion. But here's the fundamental problem. Your brain cannot really tell the difference between a lion chasing you and an unread message from someone you're nervous about. When a task feels emotionally loaded, even a tiny, mundane one, your amygdala can fire off a full-blown stress response. And when that happens, your prefrontal cortex, the rational, planning, and decision-making part of your brain, gets partially shut out. You literally have less rational brain power available to you in that exact moment. You're sitting there staring at your screen thinking, why can't I just do this? The answer? Because the part of your brain that would actually plan and execute the task is being overridden by the part of your brain that genuinely thinks the situation is dangerous. Let's put a name to this because so many people experience it without realizing what it is. It's called task paralysis. It's what happens when you're caught in this agonizing limbo between wanting to do something and being physically unable to start. And the really sneaky thing about task paralysis, it often looks exactly like procrastination, but it isn't. Procrastination is actively choosing to delay. Task paralysis is feeling genuinely stuck. They look the exact same from the outside, but they feel entirely different on the inside, which means they need totally different solutions. One of the absolute biggest drivers of task paralysis is something I like to call the what if loop. Basically, your brain starts rapidly generating anxiety-inducing scenarios. What if I do this wrong? What if they respond badly? What if I forget something important? What if starting this now means admitting I should have done it way sooner? Every single what if generates a tiny burst of anxiety, and each burst reinforces that freeze response. Your brain is doing exactly what it's built to do, protecting you by running simulations, but it gets completely stuck in the simulation phase without ever launching. Let's look at a really common real-world example. Say you need to call your doctor to schedule an appointment. Simple, right? A 3-minute phone call. But before you even pick up the phone, your brain is spinning. What if they put me on hold forever? What if I don't know how to answer their questions? What if they judge me for waiting this long to call? Or what if I completely forget the reason I'm calling mid-sentence? You see how fast that spirals? And suddenly that tiny 3-minute phone call has been frozen on your to-do list for 2 straight weeks. Sound familiar? We've all been there. So let's move on and see how this builds into another massive piece of the puzzle that almost never gets talked about, the starting cost. Psychologists actually borrow a concept from chemistry called activation energy. In chemistry, even reactions that ultimately release energy still need a tiny initial push to get going. Tasks work the exact same way.
Even tasks that will obviously relieve your stress once they're done still require a startup cost. And for some people, depending on their mental state, that starting cost feels impossibly high. When you're tired, stressed, overwhelmed, or emotionally depleted, your available mental energy absolutely tanks. Suddenly, the starting cost of even a mundane task exceeds whatever you have left in the tank. So you stall. And it's not because you're weak, it's because you're running low. Think of it like a car. If your battery's at 10%, you can still technically drive, but you're not going to get very far, and just starting the engine takes everything you've got. So the absolutely crucial point I want you to remember here is this. The battery isn't broken, it just needs a charge. This is exactly why simple tasks feel like climbing Mount Everest when you already have a million other things going on. The task didn't actually get harder, your resources just got thinner. And frankly, this is why the classic advice of just do it is so spectacularly useless for a lot of people. Now for the last piece of the theory, and it's a big one. Your relationship with getting things done is heavily shaped by the story you tell about yourself. If somewhere along the way you started internalizing this belief that you're just lazy or disorganized or someone who just can't get it together, guess what? Those beliefs don't just describe you anymore, they start to predict you. Every single time you struggle with a task, your brain eagerly files it away as evidence proving that negative story. Over time, simply approaching a task feels like walking into a test you know you've already failed. It's a classic self-fulfilling prophecy, turning a very practical struggle into a harsh personal verdict. But here is the absolute truth. Struggling with tasks is not a character flaw. It is simply a symptom. It's telling you something very real about your nervous system, your mental load, your current emotional state, or your environment. It is not a reflection of your worth. Changing the story doesn't mean pretending the struggle isn't there. It just means zooming out, looking at the mental load realities, and seeing the situation clearly without all that heavy shame attached. What actually helps? 5 neuroscience-backed steps. All right, enough theory. Let's get practical. How do we actually fix this? Step number 1, shrink the task until it's borderline ridiculous. If your brain is frozen, the task is simply too big, even if it looks tiny on paper. So shrink it. Don't tell yourself to write the email. Tell yourself to just open a blank draft. That's it. Just open it. Your brain desperately needs an easy win it can actually believe in, so give it one. Step 2, name the actual cost. Instead of lying to yourself saying, this should be easy, get brutally honest. Say, this feels scary because I don't want to deal with the conflict. Naming the emotional fear out loud literally releases some of the pressure. You stop fighting an invisible ghost and start dealing with a real, tangible thing. Step 3, drastically lower the standard for your first attempt. Perfectionism is a massive roadblock here, so give yourself explicit permission to do a terrible job on the first try. Seriously, send the slightly imperfect email, make the incredibly awkward phone call, blast out a totally mediocre first draft. Done and imperfect is going to be never started because it had to be perfect every single time. Step 4, work with your nervous system, not against it. Remember, if you're in a stress response, your brain needs to calm down before it can plan and execute. So before you force it, take 2 minutes. Breathe deeply, drink a glass of water. These aren't procrastination tactics. They are literal nervous system resets, and they absolutely work. And finally, step 5, separate the decision from the doing. A lot of starting cost comes from having to decide what to do and execute it at the exact same time. So pre-decide. Tonight, make a tiny list of what tomorrow's very first task is. Not be productive. Write down, send email to Marcus at 9 a.m. When the decision is already made, doing the tasks costs way, way less energy. Here's the big takeaway I really want you to hold on to from this explainer. The tasks you are struggling with, they are not simple. They just look simple from the outside. Inside, they are carrying serious emotional weight, uncertainty, fear, and the accumulated exhaustion of literally everything else you're dealing with. Your brain is reacting to all of that, not just the 5-minute surface task. You are not lazy. You are not broken. You're just a person whose brain is trying its absolute hardest to protect itself from accumulated exhaustion in ways that sometimes backfire. And the good news? That's something you can absolutely learn to work with. And hey, if you've been watching this explainer with a specific task you've been actively avoiding just sitting there in the back of your mind, go do the smallest possible version of it, right now.